There was a man named Tariq who lived his life with a quiet sense of dissatisfaction that he could never quite name. He was 36 years old, married to a woman named Hanan, with 2 young children, working as an accountant at a medium-sized firm where he had been employed for the past 12 years. To anyone looking from the outside, Tariq's life seemed perfectly ordinary, perhaps even comfortable. But inside, Tariq felt a persistent emptiness, a gnawing feeling that he was somehow being taken advantage of, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly how or by whom. The feeling had started small, years ago, barely noticeable at first, but it had grown over time until it colored almost every aspect of his life. At work, Tariq felt used by his employers who piled on extra responsibilities without additional compensation, who asked him to work late and on weekends, who praised his reliability while promoting others less qualified. At home, he felt used by his family who seemed to take his provision and presence for granted, who had demands and expectations but rarely expressed appreciation. Even his extended family treated him as the reliable one, the person they called when they needed money borrowed or problem solved, but who they rarely checked on to see if he was okay. Tariq wasn't completely wrong in his perceptions. He was being used in many of these ways. His employer did take advantage of his conscientiousness and inability to say no. His family did sometimes treat him more like a provider and problem solver than a person with his own needs and feelings. But what Tariq didn't understand, what he had no idea about, was that there was someone else using him in a way far more profound, far more significant, and ultimately far more meaningful than any of these worldly uses. God was using Tariq, though Tariq was completely blind to this reality. The understanding of this truth began to unfold slowly over the course of several months, through a series of events that Tariq initially saw as just more evidence of how people exploited his kindness. It started on a Tuesday afternoon when Tariq's manager called him into the office and asked if he could handle the accounting for a new client, a nonprofit organization that helped orphans and refugees. The work would be done pro bono, meaning Tariq would be taking on additional work without additional pay, something that immediately made his resentment flare. "I know it's asking a lot," his manager said, "and I understand if you need to decline, but you're the most skilled accountant we have, and this organization does really important work. They can't afford our normal rates, but they desperately need proper financial management." Tariq felt the familiar weight of obligation settling on his shoulders. He wanted to say no, wanted to finally set a boundary and stop being taken advantage of. But something in him couldn't refuse when the work involved helping orphans and refugees. Despite his resentment, he heard himself agreeing. Over the following weeks, Tariq spent his evenings and weekends working on a nonprofit's accounts. The organization's finances were a mess, and untangling them required significant time and skill. Tariq's resentment grew as he sacrificed sleep and time with his family to do work he wasn't being paid for. He felt used, exploited, bitter that once again his inability to say no had trapped him in more thankless labor. What Tariq didn't see was that God was using his skills, his time, and his reluctant service to literally save this organization from collapse. The nonprofit had been on the verge of closing due to financial mismanagement, which would have left hundreds of orphaned and refugee children without crucial support. Tariq's work stabilized their finances, identified wasteful spending, and created systems that would allow them to serve thousands more children in the years to come. The director of the nonprofit, a woman named Sister Amina, was overwhelmed with gratitude for Tariq's work. She called him one evening to thank him, and during the conversation, she mentioned something that struck him oddly. "Brother Tariq, I have to tell you something. 3 months ago, before we even contacted your firm, I was praying desperately. We were about to close, and I kept asking God to send us someone with the skills and the heart to help us. When your manager told me you had agreed to help us pro bono, I knew God had answered my prayer. You are literally the answer to prayer, brother. God is using you to save these children's futures." After the call ended, Tarek sat in silence, Sister Amina's words echoing in his mind. He had seen himself as being exploited by his employer, but she saw him as an answer to prayer, as someone God had sent. The same situation, two completely different perspectives. That night, Tarek prayed his Isha prayer with more attention than usual. After the obligatory prayers, he sat on his prayer mat and spoke to God honestly for the first time in months. "God, I don't understand. I feel so used by everyone in my life. I feel like people only value me for what I can do for them, not for who I am. But Sister Amina said you're using me to answer prayers. Is that true? Are you using me? And if so, why does it feel so much like exploitation?" No voice answered, no miraculous sign appeared. But in the quiet of that moment, a thought came to Tarek with gentle clarity. What if being used by God is the highest honor, not a burden? What if the very things you resent are actually the ways God has chosen you to serve His creation? The thought unsettled Tarek because it challenged his entire narrative of victimhood, but it also planted a seed that would grow over the coming weeks. The next incident happened at home. Tarek's elderly father, who lived alone across the city, called late one evening saying he had fallen and injured his leg. None of Tarek's siblings were available. His brother lived in another country. His sister had young children and couldn't leave them. So once again, Tarek was the one who had to go, the reliable son who could always be counted on to handle emergencies. Tarek drove across the city, feeling frustrated and resentful. Why was he always the one? Why did his father call him first, assuming he would drop everything? He felt used by his own parent, reduced to nothing more than an emergency contact. He helped his father to the hospital, waited through the x-rays and examination, brought him home, made sure he had food and medication. The whole process took 6 hours, and Tarek missed an important morning meeting at work because he was too exhausted to go in after getting home at 3 in the morning. As Tarek was leaving his father's house the next morning after checking on him, his father grabbed his hand and said something that penetrated through Tarek's wall of resentment. "Son, I know you have your own life, your own family, your own burdens. I know I'm asking a lot from you, but you are the blessing God gave me in my old age. When I was young, I used to pray that God would give me children who would care for me when I was old and weak. You are the answer to those prayers I made 30 years ago. God is using you to take care of me. Do you understand what an honor that is?" Tarek felt tears spring to his eyes unexpectedly. His father had framed the exact same situation in a completely different way. Where Tarek saw exploitation, his father saw blessing. Where Tarek felt used, his father felt grateful that God had given him a son willing to serve. Tarek drove home in a daze, his father's words mixing with Sister Amina's words from weeks before. Both of them had said essentially the same thing, that God was using him, that he was an answer to prayer, that his service was not exploitation, but a form of honor. But Tarek still struggled to accept this perspective fully. The resentment he had built up over years didn't disappear overnight. He still felt taken advantage of at work, still felt unappreciated at home, still felt like people only valued him for what he could do for them. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, his 7-year-old daughter, Noor. One Friday evening, Tarek was helping Noor with a school project about heroes. She had decided to write about her father, and she asked him questions for her assignment. "Baba, why do you work so much?" she asked innocently. "Because I have to provide for our family," Tarek answered, his tone more bitter than he intended. "But you also help other people, not just us. Like when you helped Uncle Ahmed with his taxes, and when you stayed late to help your company with a big project, and when you take care of Jado when he needs you." Yes, well, people ask and I can't say no. Nor looked at him with the piercing honesty only children possess. Baba, do you know what I told my friends about you? I told them that God must really trust you because he gave you so many people to take care of. My teacher said that when God gives someone a lot of responsibilities, it's because he knows they're strong enough to handle it. God is using you to take care of people because you're special. Tarek stared at his daughter, completely unprepared for the wisdom coming from this small child. Out of the mouths of innocence, God sometimes speaks the most profound truths. That night, after putting his children to bed, Tarek stayed up late thinking about everything that had happened over the past months. Sister Amina's gratitude, his father's words about being an answer to prayer, his daughter's simple observation that God must trust him. For the first time, Tarek tried to look at his life from a completely different angle. Instead of seeing himself as a victim being exploited, what if he was actually someone God had chosen for service? What if the very qualities that made him feel used, his reliability, his skills, his inability to say no when people needed help, were actually gifts God had given him specifically so he could use Tarek to answer other people's prayers? Tarek opened his Quran randomly, and his eyes fell on a verse that made him catch his breath. And whoever does good deeds, whether male or female, while being a believer, we will certainly grant them a good life, and we will reward them according to the best of what they used to do. Quran 16 hours, 97 minutes. He read the verse again and again. A good life. Not necessarily an easy life or a comfortable life or a life where everyone appreciates you, but a good life. A life of meaning, of purpose, of being used by God for his purposes. Tarek began to cry, really cry, for the first time in years. He cried for all the time he had wasted in resentment. He cried for all the blessings he had missed seeing because he was too focused on feeling victimized. He cried because he realized that the very things he had been complaining about were actually evidence of God's trust in him. God, he prayed through his tears, forgive me. Forgive me for being so blind. You've been using me all along to answer people's prayers, to serve your creation, to fulfill your purposes. And I've been so ungrateful, so focused on myself, that I couldn't see the honor in it. Please help me see my life the way you see it. Help me understand that being used by you is not exploitation, but the highest purpose I could have. Something fundamental shifted in Tarek that night. He didn't suddenly love working long hours or taking on extra responsibilities or being the person everyone called when they needed help. But he began to see these things differently. Each task became an opportunity to serve God by serving his creation. Each sacrifice became a form of worship. Each moment of feeling used became a reminder that God trusted him enough to make him an instrument of his mercy. Tarek's external life didn't change much. He still worked long hours. His family still had needs and expectations. People still asked things of him. But his internal experience transformed completely. Where he had felt resentment, he began to feel purpose. Where he had felt exploited, he began to feel honored. Where he had felt empty, he began to feel fulfilled. He started keeping a journal where he wrote down each time someone asked something of him. And next to it, he would write how God might be using that situation for good. When his employer asked him to handle a difficult client, he wrote, God is using my patience and skill to help someone get their financial life in order. When his wife asked him to handle a home repair he didn't have time for, he wrote, God is using me to maintain the comfort and safety of the family he entrusted to me. When an extended family member asked to borrow money, he wrote, God is using my provision to ease someone's burden and remind them that he provides through people. The transformation in Tarek's inner life began to affect those around him. His wife noticed that he seemed happier, less resentful, more present even when he was tired. His children felt the difference in his energy, the way he approached tasks with more peace and less bitterness. Even his co-workers noticed that Tarek seemed different, more content somehow. One day, several months into this transformation, Tarek's manager pulled him aside. "Tarek, I need to talk to you about something. I know we've asked a lot of you over the years, probably too much. I also know we haven't always properly recognized or compensated your extra effort. That's going to change. We're promoting you to senior accountant with a significant raise, and we're going to restructure things so you're not shouldering so much alone. You've been carrying this department for years, and it's time we acknowledged that properly." Tarek was stunned. The recognition and compensation he had craved for years was suddenly being offered exactly when he had stopped demanding it. Exactly when he had surrendered his resentment and accepted being used by God as an honor rather than a burden. That night, Tarek prostrated in prayer and thanked God with a full heart. "You were using me all along, and I had no idea. I thought I was being exploited, but you were actually elevating me through service. You were teaching me, molding me, preparing me for better things. Thank you for being patient with me while I learned to see what you were doing." Tarek would share his story with others who felt used, exploited, taken advantage of. He would tell them about how God uses people in ways they don't recognize, how being the reliable one, the responsible one, the one everyone turns to is actually a sign of God's trust and favor, not evidence of being a victim. "Yes, people will use you," he would tell them. "Your employer will use your skills. Your family will use your time and energy. People will ask things of you. But behind all of that, God is using you for purposes far greater than any human exploitation. He's using you to answer prayers. He's using you to fulfill his plans. He's using you to serve his creation. And that's not a burden. That's the highest honor a human being can have. This is the truth that transforms everything. Someone is using you, and you have no idea how profound it is. Yes, people exploit you sometimes. Yes, you sacrifice. Yes, you give more than you receive. But behind all of that, God is using you as his instrument, his answer to others' prayers, his means of delivering mercy to his creation. You are being used by the creator of the universe for purposes more significant than you can imagine. Stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as chosen. Stop resenting the demands and start recognizing them as opportunities. Stop feeling exploited and start feeling honored that God trusts you enough to work through you. Someone is using you, and that someone is God. And there is no greater privilege in existence than being used by him for his perfect purposes.